You're listening to The Founder Fix, a podcast by Maiku. We're here to sit with you in the messy, hard, and often ridiculous reality of building startups.
Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm up. You're welcome.
I'm awake, guys. I made it.
You're bloody lucky I'm not here in my pajamas is all I can say.
Hey, look, I would have been totally happy if you were here in your pajamas. Hi, I'm Becci Reed, the founder of Maiku, and I am joined today by my good friend Maz, alongside Matt Blake, an expert in no-code development and a vital contributor to our early stage founder listeners. So Matt's YouTube videos, Maz, have been a huge part of my own tech development learning over the years. But there's actually another incredible bonus to Matt being here.
I've handed in my final assignment in an MSc in positive psychology, and part of that, that's a positive reaction.
How did I miss this memo? I mean, I've been all over the YouTube account, but I didn't know about positive psychology. There you go.
If I go back, kind of pre-COVID, I was a youth worker. That got me interested in mental health. But all through that, I've been building sites with WordPress. I got into Bubble, which is a no-code development platform. And kind of right now with AI, I'm definitely feeling like this is the time to just think of new things with both the tech and with the kind of research that I've done a bit into solopreneurship and burnout. My final assignment was actually on thriving fathers. Because I've got a 14-month-old daughter now, and so the last year's been a bit of a journey for me. And I wanted to just write about something that was really close to home.
I love it.
So before we hit today's docket, given the concept of the Founder Fix and what we're all about, Matt, what does de-bloating the founder experience mean to you from the perspective of no code, but also your research in founder burnout?
So I think that no code lowers the barrier to entry. Same with vibe coding, and we can kind of touch on the differences. And what we talk about this week might be slightly irrelevant by next week when it comes to that. So it really is having that lean approach of what do I need to do today, and by the end of the week, that's going to get me closer to launching my product. And I speak for myself, and I think that this affects a lot of founders. Scope creep is harder to manage individually than it is even to manage with a client, because you're excited and that's good, but you can spend a week doing something which you wish you hadn't. I think that one of the causes, so I was kind of looking at it through the lens of someone working from home, solopreneurship. I wrote one of my papers on that, and it's about the isolation, which I think most commonly people think is a bad thing. But when you dig into the research, that's a poor assumption, because some people really thrive on that. That's their focus zone, and they get the work done. So one of the things that can be done, and it's kind of not a quick fix, it's definitely not a fix that works for everyone, is finding the right sort of community, whether that's online or down the local pub, of people who have that shared experience. That's certainly something that's quite soft that comes through as being beneficial to people.
I love that, because it actually ties beautifully with what Maz and I were talking about last week. I posed the theory and the way that I like to think about a founder being an elite athlete without that fan club in terms of the isolation. And so, Maz, I haven't updated you, but I actually ran a couple of experiments at the end of last week following that discussion, and actually reaching out pretty vulnerably to my family and sharing some of the isolation that I've felt as a founder. And so I love isolation, as you're saying, Matt, when I sit down and I'm in build mode. Absolutely love it. I love being in my community and with founders and sharing that journey. But there's a piece of vulnerability that I think is left for your loved ones that I haven't, I guess, tapped into enough. And so I actually did some outreach to family and shared some of that for the first time last week, and starting to test that concept of how do we as founders better communicate our storytelling in the way that elite athletes do, that families of elite athletes get the dream, they get the Olympics, they buy into it. Whereas as founders, you know, one of the examples of responses that I had was, well, Becci, everyone's feeling isolated right now and you chose this journey. And
big
so
time. It's a choice piece, isn't it? And I think the presumption that comes on with that is if you chose it, then you can unchoose it. And, you know, you just go get a normal job like everybody else. There's a lot of judgment that can come. What else did they say? I'm so curious.
Yeah, so I got messages saying I had no idea, because obviously as founders, we feel the guilt and we want to share the success because we're taking the risks as part of the family. And so we've only really shared the wins along the way. And so there was a lot of, I had absolutely no idea. Please tell me how I can help. I had the real range, to be honest. And so I ended up having one like deep dive already where I shared, and strangely, because I wasn't talking to a mentor who is biased because they naturally help founders, right? And other founders, like my community for Maiku is almost biased in their own right, that by actually talking to loved ones, I was able to communicate the vulnerability and get clearer on my obstacles than I ever have been able to before, which was really fascinating.
Do you think there's a difference in terms of connecting with, and did this come up in your research as well, Matt, connecting with people outside of the founder circuit versus who might have sort of an objective beginner's eye view on what it is we're doing? What is that strange thing that you go into your office about versus, like, is there a difference with the two populations, founder life people and non-founder life people, in connecting?
That's not something that came through in the solopreneurship research, but in the thriving fatherhood research, what came through very strongly and kind of what I hooked everything I wrote on was that you can't, basically thriving fathers is important because the whole family gets a benefit from that. And then you get all these amazing positive feedback loops of, so what I'm carrying forward into what we're talking about now is, the support of a partner, someone else in the household. But I do wonder about this kind of sports analogy, because there's so much about the spectacle of both achieving and failing, just like running a race, of having people, they're going to cheer you on and they're going to be present with you with your gold or loss.
Highs and lows.
But that doesn't really come through in business. And I was thinking as you were speaking, because so much of it possibly it hangs on money. Some of the success is the amount of money that comes on.
Did you listen to our episode last week, Matt?
I did. I was saying to Becci though, I listened to it and I took notes, but my memory is so dire because of lack of
you're in
sleep
good
at the
company.
moment.
Yeah, we were saying exactly the same thing. It's like the catch-all or the podium for a founder is oftentimes based on how much money they can bring in. The pressure is all around the transaction from that materialistic, commercialized perspective. And not that that's a bad thing, it's just that it's different. And so it doesn't have the hero's journey necessarily affiliated like a pro athlete does. And to your point, the win, the loss, everything in between, we don't buy into that when we follow an athlete's journey. We buy into the fact that I think it's activated by an awe inspiration of like, wow, you've actually dedicated your life to what? And you can push your body to how many limits? And whereas we don't have that story we were talking about last week attached necessarily or claimed even by the founder community in terms of what on earth is it that you are doing with all of your time? And if it's not for money, then sorry, why?
I think one of the biggest things I learned out of my experiments with my loved ones at the end of last week was that they look at the founder journey like a job that is a risk that we have decided to have, as opposed to this is a dream for me. And I've actually started toying with the idea. I've started putting a concept together of the founder's dream of a video series where you can relate to the athlete and share the athlete so that the loved ones understand the concept and then move into sharing the story of a founder and not talking about their startup and the progress and everything else, because they might pivot tomorrow, but around why they've started this dream and why they're on this journey. And so that's something I'm looking at producing very shortly.
That's just really clicked with me because I feel such an uncertainty just around what to invest time in, because AI changes everything. I keep my ear to the ground. It feels like every week. I feel like it is a little bit of a slog at the moment to just try. I come into my office, into here, type away, build things, send emails. But actually, the dream thing, because if you'd asked me 5 years ago, would I want to be working from home? Would I want on a sunny afternoon to be able to just drop everything and go down to the beach? I would have said that's a dream. But yeah, I'd lost. It's clicked home again, thanks to your comment.
Okay, I should definitely do it then. Maybe you'll be one of my first videos. First up on the docket is what we call freshly baked. This is where we cut through the noise of the current thing or consider a potential new concept for early stage founders. So today's topic is vibe coding, friend or foe. When is vibe coding the ultimate startup fast track? And when is it actually a ticket to tech debt hell? I want to go to you first, Matt, and share that non-technical founders can now go live faster and cheaper than ever with AI, as you said earlier on in this call. But in my mind, and this is why I want to go to you first, they are at risk of dangerous longer-term consequences. And if anything that I've learnt in my build journey over the last 6 years is how much I don't know.
You said earlier, Matt, the distinction between vibe coding and no coding. Can you, for those of us who aren't tech savvy, could you dive in with what that means?
I came through WordPress because it was just all visual. I never had to touch any code. I could drag and drop. And then in 2017, I found Bubble. And so where WordPress was great for building like a marketing site, Bubble allowed you to build a web app dashboard. It allowed you to do things with a database. A button is clicked, things happen behind the scenes. Vibe coding is a much more recent emergence, and that's more to do with you prompting AI to write code, whether you see it or not, or it's just entirely behind the scenes, depends on what platform you're using. Since the start of this year, it's become much more agent focused. In fact, you've seen the main AI development houses have released software where all you see is a chat box.
I wrote a blog actually called the App Tripod to try to help non-technical founders understand it. When I think of how you build an app in Bubble, I say it's a tripod of 3 legs. There's the design, so the drag and drop, making it look pretty piece, similar to what you could do on Canva or anything else. There's the database, so that's in the back end where you say, okay, what information am I collecting? And how am I storing that information from the perspective of like a file system? You imagine like what are the top folders, what are the subfolders, etc. In that data piece, you also decide on factors around privacy settings, which we'll talk a little bit, I'm sure, about in a second. And then the third leg of the tripod are the workflows. So that's where you actually say, if they click this button, do this thing. So essentially Bubble is where you get to design the front end, you get to build the database, you get to set the workflows, and then Bubble communicates the rest and puts that together. Whereas with vibe coding, as Matt says, it's like you're in ChatGPT communicating, but what it's doing on the other end is making a lot of assumptions around how you want that database stored. It's making a lot of assumptions around what privacy you want set up. It's making a lot of assumptions around which server pulls in information, if it's the user's device versus another server, etc. It does all of that that the actual founder building in vibe coding doesn't have necessarily control over. And that's my concern with the risk, is they don't know what questions to ask or what to dictate.
The tripod's gone, effectively. You don't have those access points in other than a chat interface.
Yeah, I think if you wanted to really simplify it down, you could say that no code is drag and drop, vibe coding is a chat.
Love that. Yes, that's so helpful. Drag and drop versus a chat. Yeah.
I'll give you an example, Maz, where based on where the information sits and when you're in Bubble and you set privacy standards in the background, you can actually say this information is not visible unless these parameters are met. And so as an example, if you have an app open on your phone, and let's say it's an example of all the users and their email addresses, and you've set it that unless the user is this user, you can't see that email. If you haven't set that up in Bubble as a private, what it does is it pulls all the information onto your phone, but it just hides the information so you can't see it. But if
it has the potential to. That's why it's incredibly risky. It doesn't have to, but it has the potential to, unless you lock it down. Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
if you set that privacy standard in the back on Bubble, it actually never even comes across. Like it's blocked at the back server.
Got it. Yeah.
And
So it's a visibility issue. It's like, unless with vibe coding, it sounds like unless you're really thinking through every single assumption at the outset and pulling up the code to see what it is actually doing in the background and have an understanding and awareness of how to read that code, then the risk profile is higher. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, because the best you can do, and this, as more intelligent models come out, they are more capable of answering this question well, but is to say to it, do a security audit effectively. If you can't understand the code, that's the best that you can do, and then you have to trust it.
Oof.
yeah.
Is everybody that's listening feeling a little bit of anxiety creeping in as they hear that? It's just,
I think it highlights what I was saying earlier about if you vibe code something, you just ask the AI, is it secure? And you trust the answer. There does come a point when if it's going to be more reliable than 100 humans, it gives a better answer. If it just outperforms the average security techie person in that position, then it's crossed the line and it's better. I used to think about like driverless cars saying, well, if you can demonstrate that they make less mistakes than the human, then actually, even if they do make mistakes and there are accidents, there's an argument to say that that's the route to go down. And at some point, the AI is going to be, or maybe is already now, better than the average person at writing a flawless grammar email, for example. Probably is. But as of today, you still kind of need to know the questions to ask, like how would you lock down a Supabase database?
And I think, Maz, for me, I'm also a control freak. The drag and drop and having the control over those things, I think letting that go is tough. I was asking my mother-in-law, we're in Dallas, and I was asking her how she felt about driverless cars. And she was like, oh, no, it's important to me because I feel safer with me in control of the vehicle. And as we were having this conversation, this other woman was driving the wrong way down our street. Wrong. Passing us, and we were just like, it was just one of those beautiful moments of like, as you're saying that, if we can prove that it is still better than the average, it is time. So it comes back to the topic of friend or foe. Like, Matt, when is it a great idea to use it? And when should founders go, okay, like at what point should they say absolutely vibe coding or absolutely no code or I need to go find a developer?
Today, I'd say that building UI, if you think about the time it takes to drag and drop different elements out, put the styles on, even if you can create a class or a style guide to style all your elements, put in all the padding, you can spend 2 hours in Bubble designing a really nice single page in a dashboard, and it will look great at the end of it. But with the right kind of design frameworks, the right things going into the prompt, and you can say, build me a dashboard that has these graphs and these metrics being shown, and it's not going to one-shot the whole product, although it could be quite close to doing that now, but it's going to design you something beautiful in 30 seconds to a minute, which would take you 2 hours to build in Bubble. You do have to use the latest models because there has been a huge jump in the ability for them to design good AI and even good UI, because even like 6 months ago, all of the AI generated websites look the same. Even with the new Claude model, the default output has a look to it. But with
doesn't it? I'm so sick of seeing it too, just quietly. If one more speaker puts up one more presentation with all of that teal, blue, green business, oh, slap me in the face, please, and poke my eyeballs out. I am a little bit of a visual girly pop. I like to have some novelty thrown in there. Like, just chuck an emoji in, please.
So one way you can kind of make that better is by describing the framework that you want. I want this element here, this graph here, but to give it some examples. And one way you can do that is just to take screenshots of websites that, as a web designer, this is what I used to do. I would give a client a series of sites in that client's industry and say, oh, tell me the bits that you like of each of these, and I'll kind of mesh it together. So you can, one way you can do that to improve the output of the AI is to say, here are some examples, and then you're making something that looks a bit more unique.
I loved, Matt, your example earlier of of using vibe coding to get to the prototype where you've got a web page versus the rabbit hole deep dive, which I might otherwise go down to Bubble or WordPress by the sounds of things, of hyper focusing on the teeny tiny little detail of whether or not the squiggly line is holding underneath a line for long enough. You know, that's not relevant if that landing page isn't even going to get to market eventually.
As we think about releasing a new feature or having an idea or making a small change, a lot of non-technical founders who have found people to build for them go, okay, do I need to spend $2,500 on that thing? If it's in Bubble, it's okay, am I willing to spend what 4 years ago I would say, 2 days building, today might be 2 hours building versus in vibe coding, throwing something into the chat. And so it kind of leads beautifully into number 2 on the docket, which is called the confessional, which is where we own our bad decisions and our actions and hopefully help other founders avoid making them. And so today's topic is do as I say, not as I build. So we're talking about the secret hypocrisy and the risk of the technical founder. Matt and I quite literally teach people how to MVP and build as little as possible. And both Matt and I can't help ourselves and get caught up on an idea and go down rabbit holes. And so if you think about that from a non-technical perspective, where they actually pay an even higher price because when they go down the rabbit hole, they're also paying others to do that. So you might, Maz, end up coaching both Matt and I here a little bit. I'd love you to talk me through your hypocrisy and how you're trying to overcome it.
Okay, so at the start of the year, I started vibe coding quite a complicated, integrated AI iOS app. So like I say, I can't write the code, but I saw the models could do it. I hit the point where you're kind of flying for 80%, then it gets stuck, and you end up burning through those tokens. You think, yeah, I'll just upgrade the plan. Eventually, you get it fixed. So it already takes more time and more money than you expect. But then I decided I'd actually make it a lot simpler, so I restarted. I'm making one that is much more the user is control of what AI they integrate in with it. So that's something that has felt like it's at 80% done for over a month now, probably 2 months. And it's just scope creep. It's the fact that I thought, I'll get so close to the finish line by the end of this week. And I probably spent too long on just minor UI improvements, thinking, oh, yeah, this will be fun. And it's all stuff that I'd get so frustrated if I had taken the time with a client to scope out what needed to be done. We'd rubber stamped it. I'd built it, but then I'd get 10 emails, all with little itty bits that they wanted changed. And maybe 1 or 2, I think, yeah, that would just add 10 minutes in. But it's something that I would really bring up as an issue in the relationship that I had with a client if that was happening. But I can't keep in control of it myself. And I know what I need to do. I need to write a plan at the start of the week of my MVP of what I need to achieve by the end of the week. And even now, you could use ChatGPT and you could say, be that project manager who's really strict. Here's what I need to achieve. Keep me on task. I've just not done any of that.
So Maz and I talked about that last week, and I introduced a concept that I've been instilling, which is MVP my day. And in the past, what I used to gain so much validation and positive endorphins if I ticked off everything and more on my list for the day. Whereas now, by triggering that change of MVP my day, I'm actually now, I haven't actually told you this, Maz, but I've recognized since we had this conversation that I'm getting endorphins pushing things off, which I never thought that I would feel.
The MVP my day is just a game changer. I think we need to put it on t-shirts and baseball caps and post-it notes all over our rooms.
Yep.
Yeah, so for me, it's like there's a few different reasons as to why you go down the rabbit hole in the first place. And I think naming what's going on and the context around the rabbit hole is a really important distinction. I'd hate for anybody to be listening to this going, oh, rabbit holes are a bad thing, because actually it's, that beginner's thinking mindset. For me, it's like understanding why you're doing the rabbit hole in the first place, be it vibe coding, no coding, and or just designing in general, and then wrapping the appropriate constraints. And Matt, to your point earlier, knowing Brene Brown says, paint what good looks like. But at what point do you go, okay, agreed, it's tools down, and this is the 80% that I can ship in order to get the feedback?
I have a feature that I have built where, I feel that there are so many product prioritization tools out there, and they often contradict each other. And so they're missing the context of the founder and what their priorities are right now. And so I've built a tool inside Maiku that brings all of those together, but comes back to the context of the founder and then scorecards their backlog based on all that context.
I'm looking for almost, Becky, whatever your cheat sheet is on that bit that I'm missing alongside the development that helps me validate it, helps me make those decisions. I know that I want the easiest solution, whatever that is, to be able to do that.
This topic is a perfect example where for this podcast, we're not going to have the answers. We're here to sit with founders in the messy and the yucky and say, we all suck at this. Like, we teach people on how to MVP. And as he said, it's so easy to do when you're looking at it from the outside. But when you're it's so
100%.
I think it's where we started talking about isolation, and what you've been saying has really just fell into place for me, which is why it is so hard to take an idea on your own and try and build something. Because even if you have a co-founder, you can argue about whether you need that search box, and you can make progress through that discussion. But the way that I'm thinking about Maiku and some of the processes that you put in place, Becky, is that you are helping founders develop a reflective practice that is vital because of the isolation in which they work. And there's an introspection, which is almost like a skill that we don't really reward much elsewhere in society. But by going through, so you could have it as a direct partner. Although I do always give my wife credit when I get into the technical detail and she's still listening and still showing enthusiasm, because I wonder how much you can kind of give out there. But
can we just do a shout out to Emily?
Absolutely.
What an amazing woman to sound just as excited. I'm going to contradict myself completely and say, Matt, yes, I've built that. And yes, I'm the guinea pig and I'm experimenting with it now as a tool, but I think the tool will fail. And that's one of the things keeping me up at night, because it's homework. It's another thing a founder has to do. And one of the challenges I'm having is when I run a workshop and we do the retrospective and we do the introspective, they get so much value out of it. But if they're not turning up and doing it on a call, it doesn't get done. And so for me, that's a challenge that I'm facing now, is because I say to people all the time, do not try to create behavior change. And so it's, do we start with an accountability partner? And then when we have that accountability partner, suddenly it's, oh crap, we need an agenda for the accountability partner. Oh, okay, let's use this template. Then do we go, oh, I need to prepare for that call with my accountability partner, and then they actually use the tool.
Again, if we look at the assumptions of, how much neurodivergence there is in the entrepreneur circuit in particular, what you've just described, Becky, is basically scaffolding, but social scaffolding for differences in all of our executive functioning skills. And so one of the things that will oftentimes show up is a difference in ability to organization, for organizational skills, for planning skills, for time-based perspectives. These are all ones that, somebody said ADHD, I struggle with all of these. And so what you're doing without necessarily realizing it is going, oh, okay, I'm showing up with somebody else. Oh, socially, what does that mean I have to do? Let me organize myself. I need this. Oh, hang on a second. I've jumped the gun. Let me come back a little bit. I need this before I need this before I need this. And so you're socially scaffolding all of those planning and organizing pieces, but you're also leveraging other strengths in the community by jumping on an accountability call, because somebody else might actually be really good at time mastery or perception, for example, and somebody else might be really good at taking the detail and blowing it out to vision, or taking a vision and pulling it down to detail. So you're in a community setting with accountability. I think you're also leveraging each other's kind of social scaffolding and executive skill functioning as well. I love that you're doing that.
And what you can do now, because of how AI makes the knowledge so accessible. So if I was to take one thing away from having spent 3 years part-time doing the MSc, is trying to find an evidence-based approach. So when looking at what interventions, what programs help fathers thrive, how do we make fathers feel more competent or give them more autonomy? That's kind of a foundational thing in science of well-being. Is one of them was sending them SMS tips of like, well, a bit more than this, but how to change a nappy. Here's an SMS, and the retention rate for that was terrible. It was higher for mothers, but fathers, it was terrible. But if you look at the research, the thing that did make a difference was men meeting in person to just talk about this is what my week has been like as a father. These are the new things. These are new things I've struggled with. So you can use a tool like Perplexity, which if you prep it by saying use academic evidence, is going to look at actual papers that are published rather than just someone's blog post on the topic. You can say, well, you can kind of get through from the response. This is probably the thing I could do that will give the biggest yield for the most people. But of course, everyone's kind of different in the mode of communication, the structure, but you can use AI to give you this is the best bang for buck.
So if you would take that analogy, Matt, because it's such a good one of, I see it with my husband, he's a gamer, and often they won't even game. They're just quite literally catching up as friends.
I do that. Yeah. I do that with my male friends. Yeah.
Yeah. And just the act of getting on for a game, but then like having that support network has been incredible. How would you, if you were to take my concept map and say, okay, I think accountability could be step one, because otherwise I think my product will completely fail, to be honest, because it's a behavior change. And you were saying, hey, I need the cheat sheet. Who would be your ideal accountability crew around you as a founder? And then Maz, I'd love to hear who yours would be in the sense of, is it a non-technical, someone who's good at sales? Is it a family member? Is it like, what does that look like to you? If you wanted to create that scaffolding and that social structure around accountability for your rabbit holes that you might go down as a founder?
I think it's a really hard, there's not a clear answer for me. I think if there was a group of entrepreneurs that met in a local coffee shop, I would really make an effort. But the amount of effort that, if I'm being honest, I'd put in, if it was a weekly Zoom call, that's just so much easier to drop because, I'm tired or the weather's nice. Even if I liked the people and even if I felt that kind of social hook of I'm letting them down by not turning up, it suddenly becomes easier to do so the more the more the communication method is kind of reduced.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I'm the opposite. Well, I'm the opposite because I'm a regional based girl in Australia. So lol to the coffee shop idea. There ain't many entrepreneurs where I live. I get on planes to do the face-to-face coffee catch-ups. So, I've probably built this structure for myself without even realizing that I have. I started out with a co-founder who was my sister when we first co-founded Sesame Seed over, 8 years ago now. And she's gone off to do other things. So now it's just me in the company. And when she left, obviously, like that was such a loss for me. Not because I've lost her as a sister. Luckily, I have not. She is my best friend as well. But from a business perspective, we would bounce off each other and it was awesome. So I think I had to scaffold around it without even realizing that's possibly what I was doing. And so I like to look for mentors, coaches, fellow entrepreneurs that are just that step above me where I feel like I can stretch myself into a growth zone. And I also like to do that across industries. The moment that I went, hang on a second, what can I learn from my friends in different industries? That's when my founder life just went boom, like gangbusters. So for me, the source of difference is where I get the beginner's eyes. I mean, Becky wrote for me the most outstanding bio a few months back because you just brought fresh eyes to who I am and what I do. And so for me, that accountability piece is scaffolded across different layers. Did you say last week that you used the word scaffolding a lot? Now that I'm hearing it come out in this episode, my new intro is going to be Meet Maz, the scaffolding queen. But it's
till we find out that Matt has started using scaffolding, and then
give me a week. Yeah.
That is so funny. And can I just say that AI is in that scaffold? Yeah. So I have built out all of my different profiles. I've got a CFO, I've got a CEO, I've got a CMO, I've got all of the peeps, and I've built those based on who would I love to have in my real world board if I could just wave a magic wand. I've got Adam Grant in there, and I've got Brene Brown in there, and then I've got all these crazy AI incredible humans that I listen to as well, and I throw them all into my artificial board of intelligence, and I get feedback. But I'm learning, and I think I'm getting better at recognizing when AI is great to a point, and then I need feedback from people.
Yeah.
Because really AI, there's not I think that the benefit that you get from the accountability perspective of being in the room of somebody else isn't even just the assumption that they might reject you, or there's all those social risks to, hey, I'm bringing this forward, and so how do I feel with that? But it's the self-reflection and self-introspection, to your point, of going, ooh, now that I've said that out loud, it's self-accountability as well as it is accountability to other.
In my early discovery right now in being the guinea pig of my own products and testing this accountability piece is that what I have found is when I catch up with other founders, because my entire startup is about helping founders, sharing vulnerability is really important, right? Yeah. And I do that. I certainly share my vulnerability to the perspective of connecting with a founder, but it's always focused on helping them. For me, catching up with my husband as an accountability partner every Friday at 3:00, right, means that during the week, he's very reactive, like, oh, that sounds awesome, babe. No notes. You're awesome. And then on a Friday when he sits down with me and says, okay, the conversation is, hey, you know, we're taking risks as a family because with me on this founder journey. And so I feel that I need to show the respect to him. I mean, he's happy for me to just keep doing what I'm doing, but I feel like I want that accountability to say, hey, we're making these decisions as a family.
It's the insecurity of thinking, well, if someone looked in at what I'm doing now, this is not making money, but I feel like I'm preparing the way for something that has potential. And so you're opening up the need to have that conversation in the household around risk. But it's even I think it's even more difficult for the people around us, because it's like a sports person, or let's take a sports person. It's like a sports person who starts out as a sprinter and then says, I'll just have a go at long jump, and now I'm going to row, because it's all these different ideas, and you don't excel as the sprinter, so you move on to the next thing. And that's a lot to ask of the people around you to back you on the third sport you're having a go at.
Yes! Oh my word, Matt, that is brilliant. That is brilliant.
And I'm on my 20th or 30th.
100%. But
me on this.
Also, I mean, I haven't got it in front of me. It's normally sitting on my desk. A really good friend of mine, you know, Becky, Christina Gerakides, wrote the most stunning book, Success One Failure at a Time. And if you read and this is part of the storytelling, Becky, that I'm excited that you're doing, and you know, through this podcast as well, is that every single success story in the founder landscape, every single one of them hinges on so many more failures, and I'm using quotes, and genuine failures, but also that didn't work. And so to your point, Matt, now I'm a track athlete, and now I'm a swimmer, and now I'm trying all these different sports equivalents, because sometimes we've got the itch. And I really do think that entrepreneurs are born. There's something about us that we're just hardwired to solve things. And you try to take that away from a founder, and it's like pulling out a life source. But in order to get to the sport that we're going to end up on the podium of, you are so right. And how do you communicate that story to your family? I wonder what it would look like to have seasons in the founder life cycle that we could hang hats on, that we told stories around. And I've learned more since I've started working with, you know, elite athletes and their coaches and that entire ecosystem. It's not, you know, there's different levels even of podium readiness. You can sort of say, well, it's kind of like, okay, I have a new analogy for us. Can I digress for a second? Maz does this. This is ADHD is getting into action. The sun's up and it's probably time for another coffee to lock in. I was thinking about the whole founder fix thing, and the analogy of the Game Boy came to me. And it was the idea of leveling up, that, you know, we have to get through the first level, to the second level, to the third level, to the fourth level, to the fifth level. And I wonder if the gaming analogy, that there's something in that as a founder to go, okay, what stage and what season am I at in the cycle, and how can I describe that, knowing that I'm moving to future levels, and I can keep those circulating and dreaming and visioning up and share them with particular people who get the journey. But when I'm communicating with my friends, I talk about level 1. and they've got some kind of construct that they can stick level 1 to. Oh, cute. Level 1's when you're just learning to jump. I remember that bit. And like, do you fall down the gap in the Game Boy thing where you know that bit where you have to get across to the next thing, right? Whereas when you get to level whatever, you're fighting a dragon. So I wonder in the founder life cycle if there are those types of stories that we could get out into the world that have the equivalent of I don't know, does that bring up anything for anybody else?
Absolutely does, because Maz, what I think is really hilarious is 2 rabbit holes I went down that I haven't seen the light of day yet. One of which is gaming, because my husband jokes all the time about leveling up. He's so excited to level up our kids and like see it. And so I actually built Maiku's a dashboard, which has never seen the light of day, that looks like gaming. And I went full into like gaming mode about leveling up founders, and a lot of it was and so when you start a game, you have the story. And so you have the mission. Yes, so I was asking founders on, this is your mission as a founder. And so I was like, how do I gamify building your startup? So I went down that rabbit hole.
I love that.
In the back. And then
we need to bring that to the front only because it's my current obsession. But I'm going, okay, because you can add all the dopamine delights. You can have the buzzing and the lights and the like confetti. You got through the stage, and you can have the story of what getting through that and the celebration point.
And then the other rabbit hole was the superhero story. When I first got into the storytelling a while back, it was thinking about how to storytell. So it was actually creating a novel. So each month your family could read the chapter. Based on the inputs you've had into Michael and the way I've seen you grow your business, we could curate and build your story. So it becomes your founder journey, not the startup story, but the founder journey from the perspective of, chapter 1, introducing the protagonist and like how, like that superhero of like where they found their skills, and then the villain, like who's the villain in the story. And that's like perhaps the thing that kept you up at night, that made you nag and not be able to put this thing down. And so there was that piece that's actually another rabbit hole that is sitting on my shelf.
It's trying to navigate the muddle of everything that we've spoken about, and trying to work out how much you do share with people. Not is it the taboo about money and success that you might feel, or is it that things are not going well? Like I was at a family wedding, and so the business of putting Bible educational videos on YouTube is actually something that we've been slowly winding down. So I was asked, how's business going? And I took a moment to pause and think, well, what do I share? And that's quite uncomfortable because there is, I don't know, yeah.
I'm in a similar place in that I'm going through a really big transition phase for Maiku. And with that comes huge vulnerability, because you look at the last 2 to 3 years and you've learned so much to now be at this place, which we should be celebrating, but there's so much vulnerability that comes with being in that place of change as a founder. The third piece on the docket is stepping into the third rail. So this is where we get to look at the untouchable, politically suicidal topics. And I wanted today's topic to be fuck confidence. My context that I want to add here is when I meet with, 50 founders at a time, and they are at the start of an accelerator program, and in the week where I meet them, I say, okay, let's first set some goals. 95% or more start by saying, get confident in, or feel confident in. So much so that I'm actually seeing accelerators now leaning on increased confidence as a key messaging piece and a metric of success. And I think it's dangerous. And the reason I say that is the number of founders, if they say, I want to feel confident in, it's, oh, well, I'm not confident it looks pretty enough yet, I'm not going to go live. And for me, it's, well, no, it's let's replace get confident in and put in show gumption in. So what am I going to do every week that's uncomfortable, that's going to test something? Because confidence is the reactive state at the end of getting in and getting messy. And I have concerns that there is too much reliance on our messaging, on how we're coaching founders, where they're focused on feeling more confident as opposed to showing up, doing the reps and showing more gumption. So over to you two.
For me, confidence is a lag indicator. Matt, if you think about your thriving dad's research, is there anything we can learn from the research area there and pull it across to Founderland?
So I quickly discovered that there isn't a ton of research. There's a lot on postnatal depression for mothers. There is a growing study for fathers, and so that's on the negative. But then there's even less on the positive, slightly more for mothers, much less for fathers. And so I used the self-determination theory as a way of saying, if we look at proxy terms where like self-efficacy is looked at, and you relate that into competency, because you can find a self-efficacy study, that you begin to draw in and shape a picture. My final paper was basically saying there's work to be done. Here's a starting point. And so it is around competency, autonomy, and relatedness was what I hooked it on.
Beautiful. Yeah, nice. The self-efficacy piece for me, and, you know, if you're looking at that through self-determination theory, so you got, remind me, autonomy, relatedness, competence is probably the piece that maps really purely to self-efficacy. But in terms of your reps, Becci, it's the lag indicator is the confidence, because in order to get to the confidence point, we need to demonstrate to ourselves that we can do it. Like if you think of like, I am confident. Well, how do you know you're confident? In what specifically? And where does that feeling come from? It comes from being able to put something out into the world and say, oh, okay, I did that. And that's the reps that you need to make to go, oh, I'm competent at this. I've got a level of self-efficacy. Yeah, I think confidence is a massive lag indicator, and it doesn't have enough scope around it.
So we like to finish each episode, Matt, by sharing our vulnerability and the messiness and the hard things that we're facing today, so founders know they aren't alone. I feel like we've all done that pretty well today. So Matt, I have 3 questions for you. And the first is, how are you really doing right now?
Okay. I think it is feeling a bit churned up because of the uncertainty around AI, what I should do as a business. The heart of that is what I should be doing each day to support my family, because for me, that's the root. Everything kind of stems out from that. Even though I can enjoy aspects of it, I need to be holding that at my core and basing my decisions around that. And so it is one day excitedness. Here's an idea. Here's a new piece of technology. I've got an edge on this. I can do something with it. And then the next day is self-doubt, thinking, well, what if it doesn't work? What if I'm taking us down a bad road when it comes to financial decisions? So it is yo-yoing between the two.
Yeah. And I would say, based on that, what do you need to focus on for your own personal growth right now to help you, your startup, and your family for this to be a thriving moment for you?
I think the way that I've eased off the pressure on myself is to think I'm coming to the end, so I'm feeling the pressure building back up again, if I'm honest, but giving myself a few months of breathing space, of oversimplifying it, but of just watching what's going on in the AI space. So that's growth for me, because I'm not just rushing in with an idea, but it is more of a rewarding when I'm curious. Rather than feeling like I have to make kind of bang on business decisions every step of the way. But like I just said, I can't do that. I can't do that endlessly. So I'm still watching and waiting. But yeah, there's an uncomfortableness in the now. Is my honest answer.
And so, what makes it worth it?
It is that what we started with, that idea of dream, which is I want my daughter to grow up with me being a present father, and so there's a lot of being your own boss that gives you that ability to be the father, to be the husband that I want to be, even to be the individual that takes the paddleboard out because the beach is half a mile down the road on a nice sunny afternoon. And I think in the moments of self-doubt, when I win, when I challenge that, is that I say, actually, I've been doing this since COVID, and I've made it this far, of basically being quite scrappy, having my fingers in lots of pies, networking, even though I find that really uncomfortable, yields really positive results in relationships. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, just to double click on what you shared there, Matt, is and you'll know from positive psychology as well, it's having those anchor points so that we can ride the wave when it does get, a bit messy and tumbly, to go, oh yeah, but I've ridden waves like this before and I've found my way to shore. I think having those anchor points across time is a real privilege. You have to obviously be in the game long enough to get to that point, but being very conscious of where those anchor points are and making note of them so that you can come back and reference them and say, you know what, if it turns out that my bank account gets to whatever it is, actually, I've got all of these options available to me. I think that's a really important anchor point for people to come back to.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Airbnb, I mean, when investors were saying no, they, in light of the election that was looming, they designed cereal boxes and sold cereal boxes and made like 35 grand, something like that, to keep them going. Yeah. And so I think that's the difference between, people who, again, are outside the founder world and our loved ones, that's saying, go and get a job. But there are some things that you were willing to do as a founder to be scrappy, as you've said, Matt, to stay in the game, to get to that dream. And I think that, to me, I think that says a lot about you. And because, since COVID, it's been nearly 6 years. So to be at this whirlwind phase can be really disheartening and feel awkward and I'm in the exact same place where I've learned so much now that I know now what will and won't work. And now it almost feels like I'm starting again in some respects, that it's very vulnerable. And I think owning that and warning founders that the feeling doesn't go away. And a couple of years down the line, you're going to get to that and that's normal. Maz and Matt, thank you for hanging out in the sandpit with me. To our listeners, head to mycoo.co.co/the founder fix and let us know what you want us to chat about next, because we are here to sit in the messy, hard, and often ridiculous reality of building startups. And that's the fix. See you next time. Would you come back, Matt?
Oh, definitely. Very happy to sit and listen.
I'll get you a scaffolding t-shirt and cap if you come back. How's that for a deal?